This video is going to show the code that I put in order for my addition to my project. So the first thing I did was create the text box, component. Then what I did was in my app, we're now in app.js, I imported the text box from TextBox, and I also added a route for the text box. And then in my nav bar, I added the text box, as you can see, with the routing. Okay, now we're going to go to the actual text box code. Okay, so basically what happened was, so we imported React and the component. I made a class out of it with an extension of component. So the constructor is super, which brings in the code from anything above, and this .state. So what do we have in state? Basically are two things. There's the word, which starts off as an empty string, and the counter, which starts off as 0. So what happens when there's a change? When there's a change, which means the person has entered the word into the box. So what will happen is, so that basically the event target value, that's the value that will come, whatever they put in will be the event target value, and that the state will then be set. Set meaning the state will be updated, and now will no longer be an empty string, but now will be whatever word was entered. So now as far as the counter goes, in the counter, I created a constant number of letters. The number of letters meaning the number of letters within the word that was put in. And what does that equal? That's state.word, because word is in state, and the length of it, which is the number of letters within that word. And then what happens is the state is then updated. The state of the counter is then updated. So the counter now has the counter that existed previously, plus now the number of letters which were added in the new word. So obviously it was the first word, then the original counter is 0, and that's the only number that would appear. Otherwise it would keep increasing. Now this is very important, because what happens is, the reason word now is string is because what happens is, we'll see in the return that after the button is pushed, we want the word to disappear. So this is going to cause it, because we're resetting, the state is being updated. Okay, so what happened? We have the return, so the total number of letters tracked, that's what's going to be, that's just the caption of it. Okay, so we have the button. The word is basically HTML, it's what's going to be entered. Enter your word, that's the wording that has. So what happens on change, when they enter the word handle change, and what was handle change? Handle change, that now whatever they were entered will now be the event target value. And the value is this .state.word, because what happens is, when they enter it, after they click the button, then this .state.word becomes an empty string, as we saw previously, and that's why the word that was entered will disappear once they push the button. And button on click, so what happens is, when they push the button, the increment counter function comes into effect. That's what happens on click, and the increment counter we see it's an anonymous arrow function, and what happens at that point, so the number is increased and the word is changed to an empty string, so it disappears. And export default text box, that allows it to be exported elsewhere within the program. And that is the code for this addition to the project.